Good morning and welcome to our next Fleet Leader Chat. We have joining us today the JetCo team along with Idelic's CTO and head of product. We'll get started here in just another minute and let everyone enter. While you're entering, you'll see the chats available. If you want to pop in there and let us know where you're joining us from, that would be great. We always like to see who we're talking to. Give it just a few more people entering here, coming out of the last meeting they were in. All right, let's go ahead and kick this off. We're going to get started with introductions and we'll have more people join us as we go. Again, good morning. My name is Tara Beebe and I'm the head of customer experience at Idelic. And we are super excited to have our next fleet participating in our Fleet Leader Chat series. Today with us, we have Brian, who's the CTO and head of product here at Idelic, and also Jeff and Amanda joining us from JetCo. And we are really excited for the next 30 to 45 minutes for them to share what's happening in their safety culture at JetCo. And also it's a great opportunity to answer any questions that you may have and speak directly with them. So we'll have some time at the end. Brian will be facilitating the time that we have here together. Absolutely feel free to just drop your questions in the chat or in the QA. Some of them we may answer as we go along. Otherwise, we have a little bit of time at the end. We'll make sure we address everything before we conclude. So with that, Brian, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tara. And before we get started, big thank you to Jeff and Amanda. JetCo has been an awesome partner of Idelic, and we've got a lot of great feedback from their team over the years, and it's helped our platform grow into what it is today. Actually, I think you guys have just passed your 2-year anniversary in May, I believe, which is really perfect for today. It gives you that perspective on what it takes to really drive the change management process and implement new safety technologies and programs. So I think that'll really benefit today's discussions. And I can certainly say, as somebody who's worked directly with JetCo, that you're very much committed to being an industry leader in safety culture. And I think it'll be a lot of fun to talk about that today. So before we get into questions, I'd love it if you guys could both just share a little bit about who JetCo is and each of your roles in the organization. So Jeff, I'll let you go ahead and kick it off.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff McKinney. I'm the Vice President of Safety for JetCo. Been here about 15 years. JetCo's been around since 1976. Morris Maddern, the original owner and creator of JetCo, still works here. I don't know why, but he is still here and still selling. So we've been around since 1976. Started off with a couple of little 6-wheel straight trucks, and now we're growing up and just merged up with the GTI Group about 4 years ago out of Montreal, Canada. So we're spread all over the country and through Canada. So it's a good place. It's a growing it's a growing child, and with every child you got your little problems and the terrible twos and things of that nature. But it's been a fun little ride that we've been on, and I can't wait to get into this and then share some of that.
Fantastic. And Amanda, your role?
Yeah, when Jeff is talking about his terrible twos, that's in reference to me and working with me. So no, it's rare that Jeff and I are together. So I work in Kansas City, and Jeff is down in Houston. But today, if the webinar gets out of hand, I'll walk down the hall and threaten him. So hi, everybody. I'm Amanda Schuier. I am JetCo's Director of Employee Engagement. It's a new role to JetCo, which I started with JetCo in February of 2022. So been in the industry for almost 20 years now. I'm getting close to my 20. 4th generation trucking family. So my great grandfather actually got my family started in trucking back in the day. Was not my intent to go into trucking, but kind of fell into it and fell in love with the people, and just really excited to talk to everyone here today about kind of safety, culture, engagement. I think things that Jeff and I are both really passionate about.
Yeah, I love that you guys have taken that employee engagement side so seriously that you've actually created a role around it. And that role is important enough that it's got a voice in these kind of forums. So that's awesome. I think that's part of being an industry leader in that. I'm sure that'll come out in a lot of our conversation today. So let's start with talking about what the safety culture actually looks like, right? I mean, everybody is going to say they have a strong safety culture, commitment to safety, something like that. But at the very basis, that can just be simple driver training, regulatory compliance, that sort of thing, right? And then industry leaders go far, far beyond that. And they recognize that a true strong safety culture has so many other benefits in terms of risk mitigation, driver retention, driver satisfaction, loyalty, those sorts of things. So it's really like this spectrum, right? And you have to choose consciously where you want to sit on that safety spectrum. So can we talk just a little bit about where JetCo lands on that spectrum and kind of what you believe sets you apart in terms of your approach to safety?
Yeah, I'm going to be short about it. It's in your DNA. If you don't have a culture in your DNA, you can talk about culture all day long, having, we can say this and that, but unless it's in your DNA, what culture do you have? Please show me. Please tell me, because to me, I've always been one of those, I grew up walk on that line, and I was afraid to get off that line. And, and I'm still that way, but I go into, some gray area every once in a while. You have to, just to drive some people back into it. But if you do not have the culture in your DNA where you want to drive to do your best, I mean, we're not going to be the best every day. I mean, we're human. We're going to make mistakes, learn from mistakes. And if you can learn from mistakes, then I think the culture is there. But you have to want to strive to be the best. We have a slogan here called driving to perfection. Will we ever make it? Probably not. But it doesn't say, that doesn't mean that we stop because it's just a dream. You keep fighting for perfection. So, you're fighting for zero crashes, you're fighting for, zero all the way around, but again, we're human. So if you don't have it in your DNA and want to be the best and try to be the best and show that you're trying, not just saying, this is what I'm doing, this is on paper, and that's all I do, it's not going to work.
Amanda, would you add?
Yeah, I think being in the industry, certainly not as long as some people, but certainly more than others. I think one of the things I've learned is that safety is genuinely not in every company's culture, right? And I think that, I knew about JetCo before I started working here because of their reputation. And I genuinely think that, when Jeff says here, safety is every department, it's everyone's job, right? That is honestly part of the reason I was so attracted to JetCo in the first place. And I think the correlation that I draw there is that engagement ultimately is also everyone's job too, right? And so I think that's why Jeff and I have really kind of developed this relationship where safety and engagement go hand in hand. But, I think some of the other observations I have at JetCo is we really do empower all of our employees to call timeouts, right? Just stop what we're doing. And we genuinely mean that. It's not about the load, right? It's about if something feels unsafe, you call it out. That's our office employees, that's our warehouse, that's our drivers. We really stand behind that. And I think just the way we work in the office, how many trucking companies say, oh, we have an open door policy, right? But being here and actually seeing our drivers walk into Jeff's office and have some of those conversations. Hey, I made a mistake last week. How can I get better? How can I fix it? How can I train? I think that we excel at that from a safety standpoint.
Yeah, let me add this, Brian. I'm not, I'm sitting here looking at names that everybody's in this webinar, and from going through a lot of these safety meetings and things, we're not the only one. I don't want to say that we want to be the best. JetCo wants to be the best, but guess what? There are so many people. It's amazing how the DNA is with some of these carriers and these companies. I'm looking at a couple of names. I'm going to name drop a couple of them. I see Corey on here, and I see Tracy from Alabama on here too. There's probably a lot more in there. It makes me feel better, and it makes me feel that that we're passing along this culture, and it's not just us passing along. It's the other carriers, the other vendors that are here. I don't think that anybody that's on this webinar doesn't have it in the DNA, and that's what I like about this. I just don't want to, I would love to grow, sit there and just spit out all kinds. JetCo's the best. We can't do anything wrong. That's a bunch of BS. I think we're a big old team here, and everybody on here is great that we all understand the culture, but just learn from each other. So I just wanted to put that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And staying on kind of the culture topic for just one more minute, Amanda, you talked about, the things that define employee engagement for you guys. It sounds like, everybody's ability to call these timeouts, no matter where you are in the organization, a true open door policy, proactively asking how to get better. That's fantastic, but it's all going to fail if the leaders don't empower them to do that, right? And shut them down. So can we talk for just a moment about how leadership demonstrates their true support for all of those types of policies and initiatives in the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think, literally the reason my role was created was because we saw a need, right, for somebody who kind of understood. I feel weird talking about myself in the third person, but that's okay. Like somebody who understood, kind of the operations side and the safety side, and kind of trying to bring it all together. So one of the questions I get asked the most is like, what is employee engagement? So I pulled a definition for you guys. It's not employee satisfaction. It's not like if you're happy on a day-to-day basis. It is the enthusiasm and dedication a worker feels toward their job. So for me, I think that we look at it from a lot of different angles, but I think being engaged with your company and your culture really allows you to be safer. I mean, I don't know that I want quoted on that, but I think when you're engaged in your job and you feel dedicated toward it, then I think you're going to be a better performer.
Fantastic. And go ahead, Jeff.
Part of the engagement, Amanda and I always, I need some engagement, Amanda. Part of this is the morale and things, but the biggest thing to me is listening. And there is a dedicated person. Now we all listen, and let's go. I'm going to kind of go two different ways here and try to stay on point. But Amanda will come in here and hit me in a little bit if I don't. Part of the leadership. Let's start with that. I think the biggest part here in trying to keep that culture is communications, and we communicate the leaders. It rolls down, and we communicate how it is in our DNA. The other part of it in the leadership is we listen. I think that's the biggest part of a culture is, we can say what we want to say, but are we listening to who we're talking to and saying it to? They have a voice too. So when they are the drivers professionals, let's stop calling them drivers, professional. Jim Ward wants us to call them professionals, and that's what they are. Let's start listening. And if we don't listen, then you're shutting down your culture. You're shutting down everything, and it's just going to turn into a dictatorship then. So don't want it to go that way.
So I think one of the biggest sources of disengagement in my experience has been the change management process itself, right? Once people are on board with the policy and they're comfortable with it, it just becomes, to Jeff, to your point, part of their DNA. Like that is pretty good, right? But when you're making big changes and there's new processes, new policies, new technologies, new tools, new people, sometimes that can be really confusing and frustrating for people if they don't feel like they know exactly what's happening and why it's happening. So can we talk just a little bit about the change management strategies that you guys use as you're making these types of enhancements to the overall safety program, and how you actually keep everybody aligned on what those new initiatives are going to be?
Amanda, you want to take? You want me to get going?
I was gonna say, who's gonna start? I mean, I can tell you a little bit, in my history. The most cliche answer, although it's true for me, is that I don't do anything that I wouldn't ask a driver to do, right? So people who know me know that I tell this story of, at another position I was at, we were looking at dual facing web cameras. And I didn't know how I felt about them. I didn't know how my drivers would respond, whatever. So the sales rep, smartest guy ever, is like, put one in your minivan, Amanda, try it out. So sure enough, I did, right? And some of you have heard me talk before, know this whole story, but I had it in my car for 2 months, and we'd get to the point where my kids would get in the car in the morning and we'd wave at the camera and whatever. But I wanted to try it out so I genuinely understood its capabilities. Because to your point, Brian, I think when we experience change, a lot of it is the fear of what the change is. It's the fear of the unknown, right? I totally suffer from that in my life. So I think I always try to be probably over communicative to the point that it annoys Jeff. But again, like I think for me, it's testing, it's trying things out, it's getting people who are totally in support of a new technology, and then it's people who are not so in support of the new technology. And knowing that you're going to kind of stub your toes along the way, I think is part of the experience. But really informing, communicating, and really diving in with your drivers, not just at your drivers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's building both the credibility that the solution, as well as the empathy that you have lived the solution and can say, yeah, I've been in your shoes. That makes a lot of sense. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, we did the same thing. So here at JetCo, we put the forward and rear face, or whatever you want to call it, inside facing cameras. We didn't put it in our vehicles, even though there was one in mine. We got drivers and they tested it. We had, and I hate saying this, we had A and B drivers, and you put some in there, you put 5 or 10 of them in A drivers and 5 or 10 in the B drivers, and let them test it out, let them see what it does for them, and then let them talk. And as we did that, we did this test series, it was amazing how both the conversations came like this right in the middle, and the talk got around and it sold it to the professionals. So they bought into it. They hungered for it, believe it or not, because it saved them, because our first crash was in the first week, and if we didn't have the cameras, it would have been a rear end accident, and probably a 7-figure outcome if we didn't have the cameras. So the professionals, again, let them be, listen to them. So tell them that what we're doing, and we had a big, huge meeting about it. The company did very well of sending us a lot of information and a lot of videos. We showed it to our professionals. These are going to be your test drivers, and they sold it, both sides, and it went well, very, very well. So I think if you are very, you're transparent what you're going to do, and then have them test and let that talk go, rather than the Amandas and Jeffs and Brian's, and rather than us talk, and let them talk to each other, and then it turns around on you, rather than just, here you go, deal with it.
Yeah, and you said let that talk go, which it sounds to me like you're saying that they were talking to each other. The A group and the B group were selling each other, not just kind of giving a report to you and then having you make a decision, right? They were convincing each other what the right solution was.
Yes, yeah. So they had conversations. We'd have meetings with them, and they'll tell us, okay, I don't like this about it, I don't like that. But outside of our panel, they were talking to each other. And they were talking to the other professionals, and the word was spreading like wildfire that, okay, this is no big deal. You know, we're not checking, we're not Big Brother. I could care less what you're doing inside that truck. I care about the safety. Are you going to be able to go home every day? Are you going to be able to come back and see me every day? You know, and just having that talk and let them talk amongst themselves, we didn't have to do a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't be interested in what's going on in the truck either. I'm far more interested in what Amanda's kids are doing in that minivan. I think that's where the real entertainment value comes in.
Oh, it was, believe me.
All right. So before we transition into kind of the technology half of the equation, just one more kind of general question on overall safety culture and maintaining that safety kind of program and awareness. Beyond the change management, the communication, is there any other kind of big specific challenge that you would call out to implementing effective safety programs, and how you kind of address that challenge?
Don't, we were talking earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and start getting my notes up here, guys.
Sure.
You know, when you start a culture and you get going, and you know the culture's in your DNA, you're trying to make all these changes. Don't let things turn, you know, I'll just, normalization of deviance. When you're starting that culture, don't let the little things that, you know, little problems, if you don't correct them and say, okay, that's just normal, it's going to correct itself, and then another thing happens again, and another thing happens again. Don't let those little things build up to the big thing, okay? And I get 2 examples of that. And everybody, I hope everybody's old enough to remember the Challenger, the Space Shuttle Challenger. They had O-ring, almost every, every liftoff and what do they want to call it, program had a problem, and well, that's not a big deal. Nothing really happened. It was nothing major until we lost all these astronauts. Unfortunately, I'm going to say Ocean Gate. Somebody trying to cut corners and normalizing a Nintendo or whatever little remote controller to run this submarine, using expired, fiber, whatever, they built it with expired material, just trying to cut corners. So don't let, the little bad things, don't let them fly. What's triggering those? Fix it. Don't let it turn into a normalization of deviance. And if you catch these little things and fix these little deviations, I think that the culture will build, it'll get stronger, and then you'll be able to recognize these little things rather than just let it go and grow. Yeah. And then when you grow, you get a catastrophe.
So we all talk about like the pyramid, right? Of the close calls to the minor incidents, to the serious incidences, to the catastrophic incidents, right? And I think what you're saying is, like, don't take your eye off the bottom of that period. Those close calls and the minor issues, if you ignore them, they will obviously build up that pyramid.
Yeah, think about it as an iceberg. You only pay attention, the Titanic only paid attention to the icebergs in front of them, but never thinking how big it was underneath the water.
Yeah.
So yes, you have to pay attention to the iceberg above the water and below the water line. And the same thing, just like you said, with the pyramid. Don't just work on the top and try to mitigate, fix that. I'm just going to say, I'm not talking right today, but work the whole triangle. Don't let the small things, because the small things, we tell our professionals all the time about DBIRs and maintenance. Fix that $5 piece before it turns into a $5,000 piece. Well, it's the same thing here. You fix that little a hiccup, before it turns into something else, and you're upside down and have a nuclear verdict come out because that culture kind of broke down and you normalized that little item.
Got it. All right, thanks, Jeff. Let's start to mix technology into the conversation a little bit here for the next part. So we all know that technology is playing an increasing role in all parts of fleet operations, right? Just a quick stat here: the market itself for fleet management technology is just exploding right now. It's projected to grow from about 25 billion last year to 52 billion by 2027. That's like doubling in about 4 to 5 years. So there's a lot of tools. It's still a very fragmented space. At Idelic, we've chosen to fit into that ecosystem by openly integrating with all the other partners to bring all the data together into one place, so we have a more comprehensive view in order to build out our driver risk watch list. I know both of you have been involved in selecting a lot of different technology solutions in the safety space. How would you say that technology itself contributes to actually operationalizing the safety culture? And then how do you look for that when you're evaluating technology solutions to make sure that they will fit your unique safety culture?
That was a really long question, Brian. There was like 3 parts in there, but no, good questions. I think on the fleet side of things, I think that's one of the things that a lot of us struggle with. I think both Jeff and I have been actually participants in webinars and conversations about streamlining our data, right? It's something that Jeff and I are both really passionate about, which also falls to, I think, technology partners, and people we work with. I think that one of the things that I don't know, struggle with, but I guess struggle is the right word, is like, how do I know which data points are going to be meaningful to our professionals versus the data points that are going to be meaningful to operations? And or how do we across all of our departments, work collectively toward our safety goals, right? And I think, to your point, there are so many options out there, and getting those pieces to work together, I think is one of the most critical areas. And I think Jeff should really detail, some of the cool things we've done with our driver scorecards and some of those things. But I think for me, what drives me when looking at new technologies is really my curiosity. And, is it going to help our professional driving team? Is it going to help our operations team be more efficient? Is it going to help our safety behaviors? It's question after question. We have our continuous improvement director who's like, why? I think that's our job when we're evaluating new technology. But yeah, Jeff can kind of go into the specifics of what we've been doing, but those are some of the things that come to mind for me.
Well, to me, again, it's going back to the communications to the professionals. What have you guys heard on the road? Is there are so many. We got quite a few people on here in different companies. What are they hearing from those drivers? Are you guys talking? And so some of the things that we're looking at, the cameras, the event recorders. I'm trying not to say companies. But, listen and be transparent. And then when you do pick things, there's so much information. I mean, there's so much data. We're going to get data overload. To me, before I start picking is, what is it that I want to pay attention to before I go to this? What does this company do for me? What is this vendor? Because yes, the transportation, the trucking industry, we've got to adapt. And if we don't adapt, we're going to be like the dinosaurs, and we're going to be extinct. So I think the first thing before you've got to set the list. What is it we want to pay attention to? The ELDs. Do we want to look at following distance, things of that nature? Kind of study where your problems have been, and with crashes or with all kinds of things that you had issues with. Maybe you focus on following distance, stop signs, crashes, things of that nature, and say, okay, what can we get to build around that? And then we'll expand it from there. Don't just think saying, okay, I'm going to grab it and I'm going to have all this data, and it's going to drive you insane. I'm not a numbers person. I never will be. But I have to change and adapt. So I got to be simple-minded, and pick those little, the certain things out. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. Is this is what I want to look at. This is what I want to build. Now, who's going to help me? Is it one company or is it a bunch of them put together? And I think the way JetCo went is we went a bunch of different ways with the cameras, the ELDs, driver scoring with Idelic. There's so many different things, but you get them and get what works for you and works best for you.
I love that you call out simple-minded as a positive attribute, and I think that's a good way to look at it, right? It's that focus, right? I know how to boil it down to what's actually important. That's meaningful. I heard a couple of things. Just want to probe a little bit deeper. I think, Jeff, you said driver input was important, and asking them what they're hearing on the road. Is that actually happening oftentimes? The drivers are coming back and sharing with you, hey, I was at the stop and talking to whomever, and this is the technology they're using. It sounds really cool. Is JetCo looking at it, or can we look at it? Or are they bringing ideas into you? And is there a mechanism where you're like inviting that from them?
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear that all the time. They, again, open door, and we're small enough, and we're local and regional here at JetCo and down here in Houston. So I see drivers almost daily, and they'll hear things from different companies, and hey, they're doing this, or I saw this and I didn't like it, but I'm glad we're doing this. So yeah, what we listened, before we picked an ELD, we were playing around with some of them and tested a couple of them, and and picked out the best one. So we are listening. We also have kind of going to go off and make a right turn here, but you're talking about the drivers saying something, see something, say something. We have something called, I've got your back, but they can put suggestions in there that we saw this, and use that as the suggestion, and try to work and see if we can deal with it. Like, I think the biggest thing right now is the camera solutions for the mirrors. I looked at that GCA Safety and Security the other day. Yeah, it's too expensive for me right now. I'm not a Snyder or Warner and have all that money where I can throw the stuff in there, but can I use the existing cameras I have to add side cameras and things of that nature? So there's a lot of professionals asking for those side cameras, and put a kind of like a monitor inside where they can see down the side of their truck. So sure. Yeah, we listen, and it might not be feasible monetary wise, but maybe we can do it a different way, and a little bit cheaper, but not, I'll say cheaper. I don't want to say cheaper and saying I'm going to cut corners, but maybe just a different way, and piece things together where it will not cut the culture and our safety, but also answer and fulfill the wishes of our professionals.
So what Jeff is saying is he would be lost without an engagement director, because the cool things that I get to do is I get to come in and help us figure out how do we execute some of these things, right? Or Jeff was talking about patterns in safety that we're seeing, or that we see. So I get to take those and then say, hey, let's do a training topic on some of these things. Or, like I get to help figure out, maybe we're going to introduce this new technology. Let's do a survey. Let's see what our drivers and employees think, right? So I think like that's where safety and engagement are so tied at the hip. I know Jeff gets sick of me, but he and I talk every single day about all of this stuff. And I think Jeff looks at things obviously from a very safety minded perspective. And I kind of look at things from a, big picture, long term, how do we feel, right? Like the fluffy fun stuff. But I think the two go hand in hand, really, really well together. And I think I read an article that in the trucking space, we're starting to see a lot more roles similar to mine, right? Which is that employee engagement role. And I think in the long run, I believe we'll see more and more of that. And so I really do credit JetCo and the culture that has allowed this role to exist. And I think one of the cool things is it's gone a lot of different places, but I think at the very foundation of my role, it has been to support our safety efforts.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Before the role was officially recognized as a separate role, is there a specific person or group that really was responsible for creating that bridge and bringing it all together? Or was it really management by committee and 6 different people kind of all had their fingers in the pot there?
Jeff can probably answer it a little better than me, but from what I'm seeing, I think it was what I brought is a dedicated person to bring a lot of those things together, right? And so I think certain people were doing certain parts, but I think the execution couldn't get to where we needed it to be. So
Yeah, Brian, I'll answer your question in one word. Yes. That was a simple way it went. You know, it was myself. I have a young lady for, director of compliance, the president, whoever had an ear, they were talking to. And then we unfortunately brought Amanda around, and I didn't mean to say that. That was, sorry, we brought Amanda. I've known Amanda from, I guess I met her 2 years ago. And you kind of have that one person that can sit back and get the big picture. And then that's what Amanda does.
Right.
All right. When you have somebody coming to the vice president or the president or my director of compliance, where she's just constantly, compliance changes so much. How do you listen? How do you listen? I mean, I try to be a great listener, but I'm dealing with Canadian issues. I'm trying to deal with other issues and behavioral issues. The president, he's got operations and everything else going on. Continuous improvement person that we have, he's trying, why, and it's hard for him to stop and listen because he's trying to get the why. So bringing Amanda in is to me, I think every company needs an employee engagement because there you have that focus. And she's great at listening and communicating and getting my gibberish that I throw out and throw up somewhat. She gets it and organizes it and helps communicate that to the professionals and to our team.
Fabulous. I think one of the takeaways from the webinar today is going to be probably a lot of requests for sample job descriptions for Amanda's role. So maybe we'll get those pushed out to attendees at some point later on. All right, I'm going to just bring us back a little bit onto the technology front for just a minute here. So we had talked before on selecting technology, and you guys were talking about data and focusing in on just the key data points and trying to avoid kind of the data overload and pulling everything together, which kind of leads me to the topic of predictive analytics, because that's what it's designed to do, right? To boil all this complicated information down into something. And I know you guys already have fantastic scorecards, and scorecards are cool. They do a great job of adding up kind of known values that are easy to identify and easy to explain to the professionals and everything, right? But we're also now, as we have all of this other data and it's getting more complicated and we're mixing all of these different types of data together, like telematics and camera and FMCSA and all this kind of information, it's not really like adding 2 + 2 + 2. It's more like adding 2 + blue + G equals 15, right? And that's cool. That's where machine analytics, machine learning and predictive analytics really excels. And I know that you guys as leaders are hungry for that type of technology and information, and you've been trained on how to interpret something like predictive analytics scores versus just scorecards. But I also know that can be difficult for the professionals, for the drivers, right? That predictive technology and machine learning sometimes makes them uncomfortable because they maybe don't fully understand or trust it or understand how it relates to the other types of scorecards that they're being measured on. So can you share with us kind of how you strike that balance between the technology driven stuff, predictive analytics, and kind of help the drivers to get comfortable with that and show some human empathy there?
Well, I'll start this and cut Amanda off, which is so much fun. I think of it as a legend on a map. I don't think, I tell the professionals, I had a meeting with them not so long ago, and I printed out everything out of Idelic, each one of their scores, and you tell them, this is not saying that you're a bad driver. And I don't want that everybody on this call or this webinar to think that all these scores, mine's upside down right now because I've turned some analytics on or AI on into our cameras, but it doesn't mean they're bad drivers. Doesn't mean they don't have the culture. It's just saying, hey, look, all this information coming in, it reads this and it's saying, you might be going down a road. Maybe we need to take this exit right here and go another way. I don't drive it saying that I just don't want to go down the road saying that you're a bad driver. I want them to understand, okay, it's a map, here's a legend. Maybe this road right here that we're taking is not the right road. Let's take this fork in the road to the left and go down that road and steer them the right way. And we have created a score sheet, if you will, or a platform where, again, I'm only focusing on a couple of things, some drive cam behaviors, crashes, and hours of service. That's kind of what I'm focusing on this score platform that we have. And I can sit there and show that to them and just give them a ballpark look at, hey, this is where your road's going. Look at that. Look, after I'm going to get ahead of you, Brian, but okay, we're gonna throw in a PDP, a personal development program, which I absolutely love. It slows that professional down. Okay, so here we go. We might be speeding down the road and going so fast that we don't see. Maybe here we go back to the normalization of deviance. Maybe the driver, the professional, doesn't see it. We see it through the analytics. Hey, this is what we see, and slow them down where they can get the big picture and see that. And now we're going to put them on a PDP where we really slow them down and let's talk about this. We're going to coach you. This doesn't mean you're in trouble, but let's go through some training. Let's talk about this, and let me show you what I see with the analytics that we're capturing in Idelic. And if you slow them down enough to look at this, okay, this is what's coming in from the ELDs, this is what's coming in from the cameras, and all this learning that the Idelic and these cameras and all are doing is saying, okay, maybe this is not the right road, let's fix it. And I think it just more or less shows the driver slow down to speed up. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yeah. Very much. No, I love the analogy. I haven't heard that. I'm definitely going to use it, right? You're saying that the scores, the predictive analytics and everything, you don't use it as a punishment. It is not an indictment on somebody. It is not saying you are bad. It's not even saying that you're necessarily on the wrong route. It's just saying, look, we have to constantly make a decision about what the best route is forward, right? And we're saying, given where we are today, given all this information we have, let's make a left turn instead of a right turn.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, absolutely.
And prior to all this, sorry, Brian, prior to this, before we had all this great information, what were we doing? We were doing this progressive discipline deal and then throwing them out the door. And okay, what am I doing? What did I just do to the industry? And what did I just do with that professional? I just threw the professional out after doing something maybe we could have corrected, and we sent them over to another company to do the same thing. We did absolutely nothing for the professional, and that's the culture. Is I don't really want to let somebody go, but let's try to coach them and train them and make them a safer professional. And if we don't do that, then we're just throwing it over to another company and we're hurting the industry.
Can I make a comment here? I think one area that we're not talking about, which is also equally important, is the training and coaching of our dispatching staff, of our operations staff, and how to properly use the PDP plans, or how we properly coach our professional drivers, right? Because I think from, one of the things that I always talk about is our onboarding experience and how we onboard our new employees, right? But then also once they're integrated into our company, it's the coaching and training and, you know, how they become truly ingrained in our culture. And I think part of that ultimately falls on, you know, dispatching, driver managers, the people who are really interacting with all of our drivers. They need to be coached in how to train and, you know, really learn some of the data and learn some of the analytics to help say, you know, hey, I have a driver who maybe last week had a couple of risky behaviors and they need to come in the office and sit down and have a chat. So it's not just training of our professional driving staff, but it's also training of our office team as well.
Absolutely. So we're technically at time. We're going to continue on the conversation for just a few more minutes if you guys are open to that. For everybody who's on the call and wants to stick with us for a few more minutes, fantastic. If not, we are recording and obviously we'll be posting this later on, so you can certainly pop back in to see the last few minutes here. But you've opened a great line of discussion there. I want to just kind of close the loop on PDPs or the professional development plans real quickly, and then we'll throw it out to see if there's any questions from the audience before we wrap up today. So again, love the analogy. Jeff, makes a ton of sense. And you guys both talked about how PDPs are important to actually, it's kind of the rubber hitting the road of connecting all of these policies and everything to actually helping the professionals kind of live this, right? So can you take a moment to just explain in your own words what these professional development plans or PDPs are, and then why those have been effective for you to actually, you know, Amanda, to your point, not just to the drivers, but to help the coaches and the managers and everything kind of have this standardized process and culture?
You want to keep going, Amanda, and then I'll kick in after that?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, I think our professional development plans, like I said, we have them for, you know, certain standard things. So, you know, onboarding, new to the company. But then we use them in incidents or scenarios where there might need to be some retraining and coaching, right? And I think it really, to Jeff's point, Jeff has done such a good job of, just because something happens, it doesn't mean you're being walked out the door, right? So it means let's take a look at, do we have patterns of behaviors that we need to come in and coach you with? And I think the PDPs allow us to really customize and define kind of what path we want to put our employees on, so that they are able to be successful. And it doesn't just mean, okay, you're out the door, you know, termination immediately, right? That's where the PDPs come in.
And Amanda, what system are you using for your PDPs?
We're using you.
Oh, okay.
Idelic.
Just want to make sure, right?
Yeah.
That process is being driven by Safety Suite. Obviously, we have standardized PDPs that we've developed with a lot of industry partners to try to help make sure that we have kind of some best practices to share, but then also allowing you to adjust those to your specific culture and needs. So I'm glad.
On that note, since we're giving plugs, I think one of the cool things that I've learned as we have, you know, become more and more ingrained with Idelic is, again, when I talked about my curiosity for new technology, I applaud your team for listening to me and Jeff and all of our questions that we've had, because Lord knows we have thrown y'all so many questions, right? But I truly believe that has made the product so much better for us and our culture, and just being able to really, like, we ask a lot of questions and you guys answer them and give it back. And that is like something that we're so appreciative of. So.
Yeah, I'll jump on the plug, and then I'm going to jump on Amanda's bandwagon. But yeah, Rob, I'm going to bring you out. Yes, he's been a big help. Hayden's too tall to hear me, so there's my plug for Hayden, just to give him a bunch of crap. But no, it's been great. They've listening. I've been talking about listening. Idelic has listened to us. Now, going back to the PDPs, I think what makes it so much better than some of the things that we tried to do before, and I'm going to go to Amanda's part. The PDPs allows the operations to be a part of that PDP. It's not just safety. Safety is, you know, the whole company is my department. That's the safety department. So the operations are involved with the PDPs. It's not me doing the PDPs. It's not Amanda or anybody else. It's myself who might close it, but it's going to be the operations that run it and coach the professionals. And it has to be, because they're the one closest to the professionals, and they both sides learn. We give them the template that Idelic has created, and we can manipulate it any way we want to fit our company. But I think the best thing about it is we assign it. You're able to assign it to different people within the company, saying, okay, this person's going to do this with this driver and have the discussion. This person's going to do maybe do a follow-up with an LMS that he or she has to go through. So that's what I love about the PDP. It's not a one-person show. It can be 2, 3, 4, 5 different people, depending on what PDP you have. Now, some PDPs are short, and some can be really, really involved. But again, it gets the entire company involved rather than just one person.
Yeah, I agree, Jeff. I think that's actually very, very important to the efficacy, and we've actually measured that a lot internally. The difference in the true long-term behavior change for the professional drivers when it's a single touch point or interaction, or just a quick video or one chat from a manager, versus a PDP that has multiple touch points, multiple people over a longer period of time with different modes of learning, right? Ride-alongs, video, conversation, those sorts of things, has a much, much deeper impact. And I think JetCo has been at the forefront of using those effectively. And I'm going to end with a thank you, because I think that Idelic started with a really great idea with the PDPs and kind of the concept of how that should all work. And the feedback that you've given us and helped us to refine that has made it now a really great solution instead of a really great idea, something that actually works and is making a difference. So thank you so much for helping us get to that point. We are absolutely at time. If there are any questions that everybody wants to throw out there, happy to answer them very, very quickly. So far, we have no questions, just a lot of compliments to Jeff and Amanda, obviously JetCo, and everybody being very appreciative of the focus that you guys has, industry leadership, moving to, I think the whole concept of the employee engagement and really connecting safety and operations and the professional drivers' needs together is really resonating with everybody, and how you connect that to the safety program. So if there's any other questions, Tara, I don't know if you've seen any come through any other format, but it looks like we don't have any right now.
I just want to really quick, can I say, I want to thank everybody that showed up, because I'm looking at the list. It hasn't shrunk very much, and a lot of people stayed here. So that tells me where the culture's at. And that makes me feel so much better that we're not the only ones, and then we have partners in making our industry a hell of a lot safer than it is, that it has been when I was a driver. So thank you everybody that showed up. Corey, Tracy in Alabama, you know what I'm talking about. I wish I could say more about Tracy, but I will not. That will come soon. So thank you all very much.
Awesome. All right. Well, then we'll wrap it up there. Jeff, Amanda, again, thank you so much. Appreciate all of your time. Fantastic job today. Thank you to everybody else who joined us. We hope to continue to do these types of events in the future. And of course, if you're looking for the recording, Tara and her team will be getting that posted here in the near future.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.